because
Okay.
that's a thing. I'm just fucking tired.
Mhm.
I every once in a while, like it'll be like 4, 5 o'clock. I've been at the warehouse since like 6. Like, man, I basically live here. And then I remember that like I'm part of a select group that works the full hours. 'Cause a lot of the younger guys just work 4 days, so they work 4 10-hour days. So they have 3 days off. They get out like at a reasonable time. I work 6 days, 5 of them being 10 to 12 hours. I'm like,
Jeez.
right. I'm living an odd life because every once in a while I'm like, how do people do this? How do people have time for shit? I'm like, oh right, I am not like these other people are, doing whatever. I just happen to be in a situation where I need the hours, and I am grateful for the opportunity. But yeah, I then got the family stuff. I'm tired, but I like talking. I'll stay up for talking.
Fair enough. I used to love working 12s at the hospital, and then I would just schedule myself for 6 in a row, and then take an 8-day weekend. It was pretty nice.
Mm. Yeah, if I had like the time to decompress, it'd be wonderful. I wouldn't mind it, but just go go go.
Yeah.
All right, so I don't know. Do we want to? I haven't given it much thought today, but it seems like a relevant thing to talk about the uh, was it standard of living crisis?
I mean,
That's not the that's not the right
it's on
word.
everybody's minds for sure.
Yeah,
The
it's
cost of living crisis.
cost of living. There it is, money. Yeah, I don't know. Like we were saying before we started recording, like it was my the grandparents' generation that was single income, and then my parents were dual income, but they also had like a much bigger house and did a lot more nice things and had a lot more stuff. Um, but I'm trying to do the single income thing, just because I've read enough studies about child development that like from like 0 to 5, 6, like if you can have one parent, doesn't even matter who, just having not even a parent, you could have a live like back to the conservative notion of like the nuclear family. No, conservative would be multi generational. Having a human being in the house at all times with the child is good for their development.
Yeah.
Like, so after I like saw enough studies about it, I'm like, well, fuck. Like, it's gonna grind me down, but if it's good for the kid, like, I'll do that. Um, but yeah, like, it makes me miss the concept of like multi generational. I've pitched it to like a bunch of my family members and stuff, and they're like, no, like, like it's that weird new wave American individualism that got big in the
Mhm.
80s, which my mom always likes to remind me. It's like that's when like the modern thing like solidified.
Yeah. I mean, so like when TV became a thing, that it really jump started our maybe our conspiracy theory, maybe not even that, but just like our desire to have answers given to us because it was easy. It was easy to communicate with everybody. It was easy to like. I'm sure the same thing happened with radio and it's happening with the internet. Um, but yeah, like when things become popular, TV and advertising kind of become the thing. It's easy to look at commercials saying that you're being a bad mom or a bad dad, and like want to get on to the next step instead of recognizing what has worked or what is beneficial for like a socialist structure as opposed to a capitalist one. And like it's interesting because a lot of times I will ruminate on something and like, okay, I do think that I am a conservative in this way because I think certain aspects of life are like tradition matters and like styles of learning matter. But I think that foundation has been so eroded by how technology works that it stops being true to a certain point, because like we can literally learn most things that have ever existed from the internet, from TikTok,
Yeah.
10-minute videos. That's crazy. But we don't have the same like, and because of that, we don't have the same respect for the people that put in those efforts, or who did those things just because their parents said to. Um, and I don't think that is the right way to go about learning, but it also like gives you a strong core of what is a proper way to do things and things that work.
Yeah, that trying to find a parenting style has been I don't know. I'm one of those people where I think everyone should be very thoughtful about having children. That like I've studied various philosophies, comparative religion, and like there's this big thing about that is now a pet peeve of mine of like the guru on the mountain, the monk in the monastery. It's like fuck you. Like it's easy to be peaceful when you're not in it. Like
Mm.
I think you gain a lot more from being an engaged partner and parent. Um, I've explored the concepts of like the polyamory and stuff like that, and communal like relationships. There's something different about the pair bonding element. One, there seems to be a biological component, but even beyond that, um, like tying the knot, locking in with one person, and just be like, we're gonna fix or we're gonna like work on these problems together, does something to you as a person. And then the kids thing, like if you're really engaged with it, like watching a human grow and like be responsible for that is fucking wild. Um, but trying to find that balance between like a lot of the modern concepts and the fact that uh, really traditional and like conservative countries, so like a lot of the Asian countries or Eastern countries, still have a very like regimented like approach to parenting. And their kids typically do well in school, business. Like there's something to be said about the results from a certain level of like more structured discipline, I guess. Um, so trying to like for me, I've been trying to like find that balance, and I guess just more relevant to the podcast. It's very interesting to think about like the cause and effect of it, because like I want to like engage in the what's the term for like the new style of parenting,
Gentle parenting.
gentle parenting. Like it sounds nice. um I do worry that it's easy to do wrong and that you don't equip your child with the strength necessary to face certain like certain elements of their own thing, because you didn't create like external versions of it for them to like deal with. But it's hard to know. Like you can't know until it's kind of too late to some degree. It's
So
wild.
yeah, and for me, gentle parenting isn't about just like letting your kid do whatever. Like there's still consequences. Um, but the thing that you bring to that is a sense of like calm. Like that isn't easy because emergencies happen with kids all the time, and it's hard to maintain that. Um, but like the safety is what you want to like promote. Um, so like that is what me and my wife try to do. We try to be gentle parents, and so like
I
he
think
still has.
calm parenting would be a
Good.
better term for it, because like I
Yeah.
think that's the core, like the most important thing. It doesn't matter how it does matter, but like the most important thing is that you have to be the adult, right? You have to regulate your emotion while you're doing whatever interaction you're doing.
Yeah. And I mean, even that, you don't have to. Like, but if you talk to him about what your emotions are, say, hey, that makes me feel really fucking frustrated. Like, what you are doing, like, this reaction makes me feel this, and that leads me to act this. And I know when I act this way, it makes you feel bad. And you can, like, kind of walk him through. And it's it's just a path that you can follow instead of because I said so. Because when you give that,
I
it's
I was an anarchist for years. I am punk to my blood. I will never default to because I say so. No. Don't listen
Yeah,
to me because I say so. Don't listen to any authority or adult because they say so. They need to have a reason. Even if you don't understand it, right? It's like, oh, why can't I run to the road? Like, well, because you might get hit by a car. Like, well, there's no cars here. It's like, I get that there's no cars here now. This is a trust me thing, not a listen to me thing. Like
yeah.
this,
That's the thing that you're aiming towards. It's the trust, because I think that's always been something very important to me. I speak very little, um, and give very little advice because I want it to matter when I say something.
it's your
And
conservative showing.
yeah, and maybe that's a silly thing, and maybe like it's just a quirk of mine that I latched onto that I think matters and it doesn't. Um, but it's very frustrating for me to have that disregard of something that I put a lot of thought into. And I try to put a lot of thought into a lot of things. Um,
We could segue into something maybe more on brand for the topic. Although I imagine you and I are probably talk dad stuff because one, there's from the entrepreneurial perspective, there's a market for it. But for two, as like on brand, being curious, it's fucking wild. The development of humans is crazy, and I don't know. At least for me, I don't feel like other people are as active in their thinking about it. Like I'm sure they do, but I understand it's hard because it puts a lot of responsibility on you. The more you think about it, the more pressure you feel.
yeah,
But my point with the segue is, I think I've mentioned it at least in one of the podcasts we either recorded and is going to get posted or didn't. But um, education, like if we really want to solve the world's problems, uh, pouring way more into education, into the
yeah.
development of human beings, seems to be a no fucking brainer. Like that should be like a priority.
I completely agree. And it should be it should be the kind of education that allows people to question. And that seems to be what the fight is about right now. It's like that idea of because I said so is so many people's idea of what it is to parent. And getting to my insecurity in that I don't say a lot because I want what I say to matter. Um, they also want everything they say to matter. I think everybody does, but they don't want to put in the work to make it logical or to make it um, valid
Yeah.
or to make
So
themselves um, recognizable as humans. Like they want to be deities and just untouchable and unquestionable, and that's just first of all, it's unrealistic. And when we talk about people going no contact and things, there's a lot of pushback. This is, well, I was only human. I was trying my best. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. But you've got to put that groundwork in right now. You need to tell your child that you're only human. You need to let them know that that's the way this is going, that we're trying to get through this together. Whatever happens, I have your best interests in heart, even if I fuck it up. And that's the way you don't fuck up your kid. It's because they always know that you're there for them.
well, and you gotta say sorry. Like that's such a big
Yeah.
thing. That's one of the things with gentle parenting that I'm like, yeah, that resonates. That makes sense. Like admitting mistakes, like that
Yeah.
humanizing. Although personal anecdote. I'm gonna get us back in the education thing. So I want to do some deep talk because I don't get to do that enough. But um, my son got in trouble because he wouldn't come in from recess, and like the teacher like contacted us about it, and me being I don't know me was like, it's your fucking job to be able to handle these kids. Like, aren't you trained in child psychology? Like, shouldn't you have some concept of leadership? Like, he's a kid. He's pre-K, right? Like, he's gonna be wild. You're supposed to be equipped to handle that. That should him just disobeying slightly should not have been a like a contact us problem. Like, you should have had the tools to handle it because that's your profession. And if not, be understanding that maybe he was just having a bad day. He's a kid. Like, it bothered me so much that, like, that's an issue. Like, a kid like just didn't do exactly what you said exactly when you said to do it, and you weren't equipped to somehow outmaneuver a child. Like,
Mhm. Well, how many kids is in the class?
I think it's like 12. Yeah. Yeah, 12. So I mean, like, and this is one of those things where that might not sound like a lot to somebody who is not around kids.
No, it's a fucking ton.
Yeah, which, so, like, huge respect to teachers.
Mhm.
And back to the education thing, like, teachers and police officers should be paid more and trained better. Like, that, those should be, there should be a tax for all entertainment, sports stuff, movies, fucking TV shows, whatever, that gets funneled in to law enforcement and education, so that all of our police officers are fucking Navy SEALs. They understand de-escalation. They don't need guns because they're good with their hands. Like, and then teachers should have that, like, there should be a reverence. Like, when you hear a teacher like tell you something, you should assume they are much smarter than you because they have put in the work for that. Because, yeah,
Yeah,
like,
we
trying to
should have
manage
teachers with
12 kids.
master's degrees and doctorates for sure.
Yeah, like, even at elementary level, like, that should be a thing.
Um, yeah, my
It's
son.
my opinion.
Well, my son does the same thing, and we were trying to do swimming lessons with him, and he was just going all over the place. And like, there's only four people in that, but like, it's a swimming pool. Like, this is a dangerous situation
Mm.
if you just like let something go. Um, so the reason I asked like how many people are in the class is because yeah, it makes sense for that teacher to like they should be able to handle situations like this. This is not abnormal behavior. But also when you have to juggle 12 kids, if one of the kids is insisting on your attention, that leaves 11 to like do whatever they
Yeah.
want.
Uh,
And yeah, and kids are fucking sneaky. Again, not that they're like ill-intentioned or anything, but sometimes they just want to mischieve, and that's kind of beautiful.
well, yeah,
And
they're
you want
fucking
them to be able to do
curious.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Um,
so we need more staff in the schools. I don't
yeah,
give
for
a
sure.
shit. More money to the schools,
Yeah.
better teachers,
And
more staff.
need to break it away from location based like taxes. That's insane.
Yeah, that, there's few things that feel very how would you put it, patriarch, racist as, yeah, the schooling tax thing. Like, it makes sense up front at first,
Mhm.
but then when you just look at the data and you see, like, how that plays out, it's like, well, that's fucked.
Well, and how many parents are fucking renting? Oh, I'm not contributing to this at all.
Mm.
I'd like to. I'd like that to be where my taxes go.
Back to the cost of living crisis.
Hmm.
Yeah. My biggest thing with education is I don't know why from an early age the concept of philosophy isn't taught. Because you talked about,
Yeah.
like, being able to, like, question things. I don't know how philosophy isn't just something that every kid's taught from, like, kindergarten. Like, they get, like, little caricatures of the things, because then when the kids ask questions, now they're part of the growing, like, the legacy, where it's like, well, why is the sky blue? Like, why does she have, like, one mom and this person has, this family arrangement? Like, make those questions a part of life. It's not like, no, no,
Yeah.
no, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about math and, whatever. I love math. Don't get me wrong. I love math way more than the average person. Maybe not doing math, but math as a concept. But yeah, it just seems to me like we should be focused on raising good people, not good workers, right?
Yeah.
Like, come on, Gotta find
Not
me.
not focusing.
Whatever. We're gonna get real close. But yeah, I don't know. I'm very biased as a philosophy enthusiast. Oh, come on, you almost had it. But yeah, it seems to me like education, because that was in theory what liberal arts was supposed to be about. Is about
Mm.
liberating the human being. Like that's where the term liberal arts comes from.
I mean, I agree. We should be dumping money into, well, and art is another that I think is really important. Um,
I go back and
like
forth with art.
why?
So it's one of the things I always try and talk about with the man. This pay for the nice camera, but just can't. Oh, there we go. Okay. Um, I haven't asked you this, but that's because we vibe pretty well, so we can talk about anything. But like whenever I heard, how would you put your common level socialist talk?
Mm.
Uh, it's like, well, what would people do? And then you get the like, well, I'd be an artist. It's like, no, you fucking wouldn't. Like, if we all had to contribute, like, who determines who's the artist? Like the art thing within a communist society. Um, the only examples we have are the only examples is you had the state commission propaganda and you had artists try and sneak in their own takes, and they did that until they got caught and killed. Um, so, but like flipping that over to like the more liberal side of things, um, art is weird because modern art is so different than it was in every period prior. The term art translates literally to skill until like leading up to and then coalesced in the modern era where art is its own thing that you can't quite put your finger on. A banana on a wall all of a sudden is art. So totally devoid of the skill element, is entirely symbolic. Um,
Well, it depends on where you think the skill is coming from. Like if the skill is coming from your hands, then yeah, it doesn't take anything to put a banana on a wall. The skill is coming from your mind. If if that's the thing that you find interesting, is look at how many people I can get to fawn over fruit, or something I had nothing to do with. I think that's interesting. Um, and it's like I am not in the like the artist space. I don't know what's like big news or like big trends in art, but I think like the well, and because of that, most of the art that I see is like there's a lot of pretentiousness because for it to get to my attention, some like people have to be making a big deal of it, and when artists make a big deal of it, it's like this is either really good or this sucks in a really big way.
I think I should ask a better question, but quick anecdote. Yeah, art people should go to art galleries and museums more because I saw a Warhol, one of the Monroes in person. No internet picture can capture a Warhol in person. It's fucking stupid, right? Because like I like modern art. I like abstract art. I just I want to make sure people like have the historical context and all that type of stuff. But yeah, seeing a Warhol in person, I was stunned. Like it, they just had one Monroe with all these like other pieces that they had in kind of their like big historical artist room. Um, and yeah, it gripped me. I was like, holy shit! Like I've seen pictures of the Warhol stuff, the cans and the Monroes. I'm like, okay, whatever. He did some like funny colors, but seeing it in person's different. Um, but I guess so. You said like an emphasis on art. I guess what do you mean when you say that? I think that might help me figure out where
Well,
we're going with this.
so for me, like art is about being able to express emotion um, and feelings, and like there's a huge spectrum there. But so being able to express, so it's a form of communication. Um, and I think we've talked about the book, which I haven't read, but I've been meaning to. But all artist propaganda, and like we've kind of got into the subject of just like every bit of communication is propaganda. It's all leverage that's being used to manipulate some sort of response. Like, and it doesn't necessarily need to be like manipulative in its intent, but it will be like saying I love you means different things coming from different people, and even if you mean it like completely heartfelt, that can hit so differently to so many different people. And so when I say the emphasis on art and education, it's the ability to think and recognize your feelings and communicate them. And like we have communications, but I feel like any communications class I've ever taken fell vastly short of that definition. And it's mostly about business communication, how you should like structure your emails so you don't offend people. And that's it's fine and I'm pretty good at it, but
You always got to
it's
go with
missing.
the neutral sign off. Hail Satan.
Yeah, yeah. What is it? This meeting could have been a fist fight.
Oh, I see your
So,
point. Yeah. Couldn't you just teach psychology though? Like have that be a
well,
more integral part of the
psychology
curriculum, especially Jungian psychology? Huh? Huh?
and like I think that's part of it. So like this is essentially a more holistic education system that I'm talking about. So when I say art, it should be about being able to find your expression that works for you, not necessarily like this is how you draw figures, but this is how you explore the world of
Okay.
creativity.
See, yeah. So this is what I was saying about the word art. I feel like I don't know. It works. The word is so good for that. It's just not what it originally meant.
Yeah,
Because
how
now
could
that's
so
the
few
thing.
syllables mean so much?
Well, and it didn't used to mean that. For most of human existence, art meant craft. A blacksmith was an artist. A carpenter was an artist. We now kind of distinguish artisan for that versus artist. But using the term art for this plane of abstracts, this plane of symbology, is wonderful. I really like it. I'm going hard against it. Um, but I've tried to do thought experiments, and no other word fits quite as well. It seems like it was the caterpillar to a cocoon, and the butterfly is the modern art like concept. Um, but yeah, no, like I think from that perspective, yeah. I mean, there's just how would you even go about teaching that? Because like when you say teach art, right? Like okay, so what are you gonna do? Like show them the art eras, like an art history. It's one of the reasons I didn't
Well,
take.
I mean, you can do that, and that's kind of how my mom tried to go about it when we were like homeschooling. It was very much a like prescriptive, looking at certain artists and like memorizing painting names. Um,
But see, when you were describing it, what I think is like teaching a kid that if, you know, okay, find ways to express yourself. So like when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like how you role play and play the character, that's art. Or how when you're outside and you're playing like make believe and like how you set up the scene. Like do you get the props already and like set a scene? Like that's art. So like that deeper concept, I see some validity to that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, because that's what I'm trying to get at. In that art has been,
it's
I
basically
feel the
like
opposite of you. It's been like kind of narrowed down to like you have like appropriate artists. Like everybody needs to know what Mozart said, and you need to only know these things about Mozart because you can't listen to him talking about licking assholes. And
Mozart, what a guy.
and that's fine and really good information if you want to go into like if you want to
Be
be
an
a
art historian.
historian. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that's always my
it's
trouble
way
with
more
philosophy
interesting to find
programs.
what is working for you in like whatever medium that you're hungering for. So you say I want to see rage. Like I want to see what rage looks like or what it sounds like or even what it feels. And then you just go and like that's a feeling that we can kind of send you in a direction. Say this is what people have thought about rage. This is what people have thought about war. And like when some of
Okay,
those
okay,
like
yeah, I see what you're getting at. So because then it becomes very comprehensive because you can take an idea and then you can pull in a literature, a painting, a movie. Like,
yeah, a
okay,
rock song.
hmm
And that that's a hard place to get to. You have to be at a place where you understand what you're looking for. So that's the part of the holistic side that's like that's down the road. And just like in Maslow's hierarchy, like we don't have an inherent need to be painting, but we do have an inherent need to express ourselves.
hey, even
So
Pythagoras, who was a hard ass, was like, you need to know math and geometry and oratory skills, and you better play a fucking instrument.
that's awesome. Um, so yeah, I think art is a major point of I mean of human experience. I think it's part of a well-rounded human being is an appreciation for art and a striving to express yourselves in intangible ways, and or maybe tangible isn't even
Well,
like
it's the way that you're talking about art, or we're talking about art now, is basically how do you play as an adult is part of the
yeah,
thing. I think that's one of the things that because play is another one of those words. Art and play, I think, are magic words in the human experience that just
yeah,
don't get enough weight put to them.
yeah.
Because yeah, it's
Um,
being able to play with ideas, play with feelings, play with mediums, play with
there's
life.
a
Fuck.
yeah. There's a, he's he's a TikToker and he talks a lot about like etymology and metaphors, but he was talking specifically about how um, how sailing based the English language is. Even hundreds of years after it's been like a staple of what most people do, it is so ubiquitous in our speech. Like loose cannons and tying up loose ends, and, um, like by and large, I think was one of them. It's just like different sailing terms that just like became seeped into the language. Um, and I think that's so cool that language develops that depth. And English isn't a deep language when it comes to to that. Like there are a lot of those meanings that you can kind of follow back, and even some that we've lost. But is it is Muslim the language?
Arabic.
Yeah, I guess it would just be Arabic.
Yeah.
Okay, but so
Sorry.
no, the like the saturation of God in that language is insane. And like
Mm.
only speaking English, I don't have a way to like understand that all without like making that a full-time job. But that's so cool to me that like metaphors can be gained from like words like and it all just
Yeah.
like it goes back
Yeah.
so far.
I don't remember what the history of it is, but there's like an Arabic phrase that means like I'm gonna look it up real quick because we have the internet. Um, but it's the phrase like he has long teeth, has long teeth phrase. Again, the first time I heard it, the expression "long in the tooth" indicates someone old. That
Okay.
doesn't seem right, is it? I don't know, but yeah, it's one of those things where it's like it just doesn't make sense to like the Western English thing. And somebody explained it to me, and I'm trying to like recall it now. And even now, I'm like, it didn't click right
Yeah.
because like just talking about teeth just doesn't.
Yeah, how do you have that much meme in a language? It's really cool. Um Now I can't decide if it's like Ashkenazi or Yiddish, but those also have some like similar like phrases that they'll talk about. Like it's may all your teeth may all your teeth fall out but one, and may that one ache with excruciating severity. And it's like, oh, that's so good.
Yeah, American English is uh, a rather unpoetic language. As it is, it can be the advantage of American English is it can bend in ways, I think more ways than most other languages. But built in, it's very stale. And it's or sorry, not built in, baseline. Its baseline is very
Yeah.
stale.
I mean, it's very it's very sprawling. We have a lot of words that mean a lot of things, so you can get to the meaning that you want, but it is less poetic. Like it's less musical,
Hmm.
um, which is why I really value like good prose. That's that's like one of the things that really speaks to me when it comes to a book. And good swearing is like pinnacle for me. It's like when you can make something like so melodic, but also like in the King Killer Chronicles, it's a translation, and he's like, I think what he said was shit in God's beard. Ah, that's so good.
Yeah, we don't have very many phrases. Like it's part of the common thing anymore. It's all inside jokes in America
Yeah.
now because it's all just meme stuff, which I do appreciate.
Well, and the things that we value nowadays have it's definitely like skewed more secular. So like we don't have a or we don't have a culture that is 100% based on one religion. So we're not going to develop like that lineage of language. So like the stories don't evolve their way into our zeitgeist as much anymore. But we do have things like video games changing the language all the time. Like,
But even like our neighbors, right? Because like Leonard Kenny, one of my favorite shows, like they,
oh
they
yeah,
constantly flex the Canadian phrases, and one of my favorites is "as sure as God wears sandals." Like, it killed me the first time I heard it.
it's so good.
Yeah, and like yeah, they speak English, but like it's a more homogenous culture. Like, I so maybe we'll slowly pivot into kind of the field that our episodes I want to lean in because I think it's a good area for us. Americans and comment critics of America have been very like, America, white patriarchy, da da da. But like, we are a like extraordinarily diverse. Like the melting pot thing is real. Like we have struggles, we still have to get over stuff. But even compared to other modern Western countries, other first world countries, like they are so much more homogenous than we are. Even just state because state to state is country to fucking country. Like we're
Yeah,
so big. So sometimes I feel like we don't give ourselves enough credit and like lean into the positive. Yeah, and I don't want to get lumped in with the conservatives who think that the founding fathers were theists, not deists. But I think there is something to like not overemphasizing the problems we still have and like it's the Martin Luther King thing where it's like it's the appeal to the ideal is how you make the change. You don't just bitch about it. You go, no, there's this great thing that we're doing. Let's just do more of it.
yeah. That's how I got started on TikTok is talking about the difference between patriotism and nationalism. And I don't think
Mm.
you can be a patriot without recognizing the country's problems. Saying, okay, this is where we can be better. Like, and that's what patriotism is. It's trying to make the country better.
It's yeah, it's
And
a nationalist is my country's best. A patriot is I want my country to be the best.
Yeah, and patriots recognize that there's not there's not a single country on earth that we couldn't learn something from. We
Mm-hmm.
couldn't adapt, like, to emulate and become a better country. And like that's so lost on like the nationalist movement. And just like what a shitty stale place that would make.
Yeah, the "Make America Great Again" phrase is a shit phrase. Like,
Oh yeah, definitely. Is have you heard Bryan Cranston talk about it?
uh-uh.
He's just like, well, when has America ever been great for black people?
Oh
He's
yeah.
like, and just that one sentence is just like, ah, fuck, it's really good. That's
There
good
there
rhetoric.
there was a time, I don't know when the time was. There was this gap where they had just enough support to like create their own communities, right? Where they had the self-sustaining economies. We didn't. It was the step before we started intermingling successfully again, and then of course the racist powers went through and eradicated all those, turned them into the ghettos
Well,
we now have. But there was a window, so maybe we should focus
well,
on what.
there was definitely like strives of improvement for sure. But I would say like Tulsa is like one of the biggest examples of that. And there's the Tulsa massacre. It's
Mm, yeah, I
and
think
it
that was one of
hasn't
those
been like
examples.
because of something the country did that was right or good. It was communities coming together and saying, okay, like you don't want to help us, we're gonna help ourselves. And even that is like smashed down. Like those prejudices are like held on to
Yeah,
just like
yeah, kind of the exceptions that prove the rule.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah, it's like the great in what regard? Like I don't know. It's back to these arbitrary lines that people fucking draw. First in
Yeah, like if you can
history.
give me a year, like tell me what year you think we should go back to, and then we can examine that. Like it's just so fluffy. Like you don't care about making the country great. You care about nostalgia. You care about
And
being able to
power.
not get in trouble for using the N word. Like
Yeah, because yeah, if people talk about the 1950s, like the 1950s had some fucking problems. We know this because it led to the fucking 60s. Like, it was a decade. It was a decade of this fake thing. This like attempt at that. And like there was good things, right? And that's the thing is pull out the good things, keep those, and then wash out the bad stuff or the stuff that didn't work.
yeah, yeah. Washout is like makes me nervous, but yeah, recognize the bad that we've done and the things that we do to get better.
You sift for the gold, like wash away the dirt. And I know that, yeah, I guess the washing word is loaded within
Mm.
these types of contexts and conversations
See, that's a way that English is deeper than
and
it would
changing.
seem. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, I guess I've just been on like with everything going on in the world. Like I just had my big patriot bent, like because they just passed that aid package, and like I can see the political reasonings for some of it, as it were. But I don't see how anything is a bigger priority than the healthy middle class. Like even from their perspective, I guess. Um, yeah, the kind of conspiracies where it's like they want a revolution to justify draconian laws feels more and more real as they keep ignoring the problems.
Well, like we have the nouveau rich, right? Nouveau riche, because focusing on what causes revolution has been like forefront of most rich people's minds for a long time. And most of the time, those rich people they travel in genealogies, right? So you pass these fears onto your kids, But with things like Bitcoin and Amazon, and these people just like get thrust into this world. Not that
Mm, okay, I see where you're going.
yeah, it just completely changes the structure of who is like thrown about all this money.
Yeah, because
And I
it's
still think that there is like the old money that is guiding quite a bit. But you get
yeah,
to a point where you've literally never had to think about who's going to cut your head off, and like you can't imagine it, so you just start swinging your dick around, and like that's where this this upheaval comes from, and this resentment. It's like from things like the Kardashians, where people are so just pissed off at this just like masturbatory opulence, and like sometimes it's fun to feel like a part of like that parasocial relationship, but at a certain point there's almost a speciation. Like everybody loses humanity looking at the other side because there's no needs that you have that are in common. Like they literally can't think about what it's like to not be able to get food, and you
mm,
can't think about what it's like to like how you would change the tires on a Lamborghini. Like that's insane. Like why would I ever even need to know that?
yeah the it's weird to me that the opulence thing works so well. My take, which has always been my take, I have this running personal mythology based on true events that I had a sales job, and me and two of the other guys kind of had the conversations that became the predecessor to what this podcast is. But one of them was a libertarian and one of them was a socialist, and then there was me. Um, but my take has always been it's culture and narrative that needs to be addressed. Because my take is that it's the niche death of God that has allowed us to like create these things. Like we haven't rebuilt like a philosophical or cultural narrative that's strong enough to resist it. But we still have that void. So it opportunity arises and people capitalize on it. Um, but I don't think you can force like there not to be celebrities. What you have to do is grow the culture to not want celebrities. Is kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I think that's
Which is a big ask. I think about it all the
yeah.
fucking time.
Well, and especially with how connected we all are now. Like I said, a parasocial network where like we're listening to podcasts, like we feel like we know these people because whole lives are just like kind of out ready for you to look at. That's it's hard to dismiss those people as I don't know, just like to dismiss them as like normal because that's not normal. Like, most people like they don't have the opportunity to just be talking all the time or to get their entire story out. Um, so yeah, there's the tendency to like, deify anybody who gets that kind of access. Um, and technology just like keeps that wheel rolling. I think it's real interesting. That's one of the things I always try to like remind myself of. It's like being a hero worshiper is it's a good way to drive yourself crazy. It's a good way to um, kill your gods because I mean if you don't maybe that's not the right word because if you're a hero worshiper, no matter what they do, they'll still be your heroes. But if you're a hero ponderer, like what about this person is so interesting and good, then that leaves you the wiggle room to take a step back. Because like in the '90s, I think a lot of people would have said that Bill Cosby is a hero. Like he
Mm.
brought the kind of family vibe that a lot of people were like striving for and longing for. Um, he's a fucking monster. Like a lot of people knew it then, like, but it's that like that hero worship that allows things like that to happen. And I think it's so bad in like Hollywood, and when you have those kinds of vast like power differentials.
Well, and so this leads to my two pillars. This will be my thing. I'm working on a book that I talked to you about, but my two pillars of how to solve the problems: education and community. Like what we don't have enough of is good community, both local and even within like the digital space. Um, but we shouldn't be going to corporations for fucking anything. You shouldn't have like if I want clothes, there should be a local seamstress who buys fucking wool from a local farmer. But also when it comes to entertainment, right? Like there should be a local theater. Like there should be like live music. Like that ecosystem needs to be uplifted. The trouble is we're
Yeah,
you know dying of thirst for that type of stuff, and then like I said, that hole gets capitalized on by these super people who instead of it just being small communities where it's your local hero
yeah,
or here within your community like an online community, they're superheroes in that regard because they have so much pull and attention, and like you said, it's not normal. Like that is the normal thing is your local person, right? The person that you actually do know on some regard, or somebody that knows them. How we get there, I don't know, but it seems to me that like that, just finding ways to move that direction would be better.
that's so I joined a makerspace here in Utah, and it was immediately like just felt like home. Just like very peaceful, very connected with the people. Like, oh, I don't even necessarily like anybody, but I'm willing to help. I'm willing to like just put things out there and like volunteer. Um, and that was a step. It was like that was one step that immediately made my life better, and it was really cool. Like it opens up a lot of doorways, and like yeah, it's something that I think everybody should be striving for.
I see a lot of good things coming from the nerd community with this. Um, the elevation of One Piece as a cultural mythos, like across cultures, is
Interesting.
wonderful. It's so good. Um, my only trouble with nerd culture is it's so much plastic. So much plastic.
Well, it doesn't need to be.
Right. Just I'll watch people talk about climate change with a wall full of pop dolls. I'm like,
Yeah,
like,
but again, those people aren't putting all of that. Like it's the 70 or the 100 companies that are putting out 70% of the pollution,
mhm.
and like that's part of it. It's like the consumables that we buy, but even the person with the most like plastic due to them, like personally, it's kind of a drop in the bucket.
It adds up is the thing. I always think about when I take out the
Yeah,
garbage. Like, okay, I'm taking out garbage. My garbage doesn't seem like a lot, but then when I think that every neighbor I have is doing this, like, that's a lot. That's a lot of fucking garbage going
no,
somewhere.
yeah, and I've been thinking about that too. It's like, how can we just like what is a good cardboard recycling system? Like, there's plenty of things I could use cardboard for. You can make. I've seen people make ships out of it. Like, how do we get to that point where we can just locally recycle whatever we have? Like, how many fucking? I think aluminum is one of the best things to
Hmm.
recycle. So that's great. But
Yeah,
we
I
could be
used to be
doing that with
skeptical about
glass.
it. Glass,
Yeah,
awesome as well.
like plastic. It
Fuck plastic.
yeah,
Ceramic,
and it's
glass,
hard.
aluminum.
Yeah, and maybe transitioning to those things would be a lot better. Um, but how many resources are just rotting away in landfills that we could absolutely make like incredible things with? and
Plastic
like
recycling
steel.
is hard. Oh, but so like the other components, yeah, that's
Well,
just
well, plastic recycling is hard, but like it doesn't need to be recycled to the same level. Like like you can use it as mallets. Like I've seen people melt down plastic like milk jugs, and that's a really good carving mallet. Like it doesn't need to be like functional for what it was before, despite it like. And I know it still does break down in some ways. I haven't really got into the science of that, but
yeah, microplastics. The trouble with plastic is microplastics. Like it just gets
yeah,
into shit and fucks
yeah.
it up. You know what we have a lot of? Sand. It's just
And
glass.
coal,
Well, we have more sand than we have coal.
yeah.
We have more sand. Like we have so much sand that we're trying to stop the sand. No one's been like, oh, we have too much oil. People are like, we have too much sand. Put some fucking trees on the edge of that bitch. Like, yeah, I don't. And then yeah, so like we're calling this dichotomy of the solutions are local, but then we got these world problems going on. Like then
Yeah.
that's the big struggle dichotomy right now. I still stand by the fact that I think focusing locally will yield long term the global results. So I'm a bit of a isolationist in that way when it comes to American foreign policy. It gets tricky, but I am pro military strength. Because Matt and I were talking about this the other day that people kind of take for granted how we see a lot of war in the world, but there's a lot less because nobody can fuck with us. Like when you see like how much we spend, when like our military might as a country is, it would take a coalition of most of the world to even give us a run for our money. Like
Yeah.
there is something to be said about the peace factor that comes with that. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It seems like, yeah, I guess because to me it's like if we create better and stronger communities, stronger middle class, like then what we should do is like have a better refugee program, right? Like be the melting pot, be the place that people escape from to. Um, what is it? The, give me your, you're sick, you're tired, you're poor.
Tired,
Like
hungry, poor.
yeah, like do that. Like don't fix the world. Make this place great and sustainable for that influx. And then let the bad people keep their countries until they run them into the ground, and then we send out our tourists and they gentrify it.
Well, I mean, shouldn't we let the bad people run our country into the ground then?
No, because I'm a patriot.
Okay. I am. Yeah, it's a tough one because I was having a conversation with one of my bosses a while back, talking about I think it was Iran and kind of how the pot's always simmering over there. It seems like there's always like a violence to be like lashed out somewhere. Like yeah, it kind of may be. Um, they definitely have like that same militaristic culture that we do. Um, but like the difference between our like allies in the Middle East and Japan is crazy to me. Like we committed genocide in Japan. We are pretty good allies. Like we have pretty good relationships. Like we know how to make sure that people don't want to kill us, and it's by making sure that the country is taken care of. We don't
Yeah.
give a shit to do that.
It's also cultural because I've seen a lot of stuff. I get a lot of Japanese
Well,
stuff in my feed, but like
is it cultural? Because pre
partly,
like World War II, Japan was absolutely willing to do some shit.
here's the thing: they'll admit that. That's what's different. Is when they lost, they were like, "Oh, we should probably reflect on why we lost," and then they did as a culture, which is why like the average Japanese person who was like a kid during World War II doesn't be like, oh, you committed genocide. They're like, no, 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 no. Like, we would have killed you too. We get it. Like,
Well, but how do you have that conversation in the light and in the shadow of America, like of boots on the ground? Because we've never pulled out of Japan.
yeah, I mean, your ultimate point about like building people up, yeah, like that's a huge part of it. You have to help get the prosperity out, which is back to my like, America needs to be strong internally too, so we can afford to do that. Like, if we want to be a beacon of liberty, democracy, and prosperity, we can't be sick as a country.
Yeah, sure. My point is more that, like, we know what pisses people off and we know what calms them down, and we aren't doing the things to calm them down in other places. We don't care most of the time. We like to swing the military around, and like, if we actually wanted to make the world a better place, we would try that kind of diplomacy. Try the kind where we stop fucking with people's countries, allow them to be. But we've been doing those coups for a while.
Yeah, which is that, again, that's the, like, to me, as what I think of as American patriot, like, that's just fucked. Like, that shouldn't be a thing. Like, I
Well, so to me that immediately gets to like capitalism. It's like, well, like these countries are all trying to go socialist or trying to go communist.
mhm.
It's like, well, if America can't like put up the commercial of how good it is by itself, why should they be capitalist?
Yeah,
Why
right.
should they follow you?
Yeah, yeah. It should be a battle of ideas. You shouldn't be putting guns to people over it. Like, if we're really better and we want to be better, then we should be better, and it will be better.
Yeah,
Like,
it's like we have so many of the advantages. Like the amount of resources that America has is fucking mind blowing, and with that, we should be able to do everything. We should be able to make whatever system work. And the fact that we have to use the military to like break down other systems so we look better by comparison essentially is so telling.
yeah, and if communism was ultimately flawed the way that people say it is, then there would have been no need to intervene. You
Yeah,
let them become
exactly.
communists and let them implode, right? Like,
Mhm. Yeah, we'll be there
if
to
that
pick up the
was,
pieces.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
Me neither. No, no
No,
shit
we
about
just gotta
fuck.
get people to. We just gotta get people together. I just don't have fucking time for that. Like,
Yeah,
that's my problem.
that's the point.
Well, that's the thing. Is like, I'm an anomaly even within like where I work. Right. Like, most people do have time and they fill it with
Well,
fluff.
like, do they have the time?
Yeah,
Because
because
like they still need
they
the like. How many people are working two jobs nowadays? Like, it's a lot.
yeah.
And
But like, my
like, I
company
think the
puts on
idea.
like a whole Olympics. So people like have their families, they have their social group, they have their hobbies, and they like join in work activities that last several months on a regular basis. I I don't get how they have time for that, but this is the things they do, right? Like, I see these people that like catch a bunch of sports games, they're going out on a regular basis, they're taking all these trips and stuff. I'm like, you have more bandwidth than I have. If I had more bandwidth, I would be dedicating it to something positive, I guess, like something constructive. But to each their own. I get the appeal of, I don't know, wanting to be entertained,
Yeah.
but which is why I think, yeah, it's got to be a cultural shift. One person, one conversation at a time.
Well, how would you change the culture without being entertaining?
Well, yeah, you got to be entertaining. I'm not saying not being entertaining, which is part of my point about the cultural shift. And we're moving in that direction, right, with the podcasts. Because, like, the number one form of media for viewership is people talking. It's fucking radio. Like, we went back to, like, I'm tired of, like, the fluff stuff. Like,
Well,
there's, yeah.
aren't video games like up there?
Yeah, see, back to, like, my criticalness about nerd culture. It's like, I love video games. I It just seems like something that's so easy to overdo.
Sure. Like, and like there are addicts, things like that. Um, but my point is, of all the things that have radicalized me the most, or like pushed me in ways that I can recognize and still reflect on as a good thing, I would say that like media is probably the biggest. Like, I probably started my journey like watching Malcolm in the Middle, like fucking years and years ago, because it's a very poignant to somebody who has all boys, like a big family, didn't have a lot of money, like, and some of these like it's a very class conscious show, so it allows you to look at it from the perspective of that and not from a New York apartment like in Friends.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
And that's another major part of what art is. It's speaking truth to like the human experience, and a lot of those truths I wouldn't have picked up on without them being presented in clever ways. So like those those people who are putting that in, they're like scientifically minded, but they're also artistically minded. So people like Cody Johnston and um, Colbert and John Oliver, they have something that just speaks to me, that they know how to deliver in a very funny way good information. They know how to disseminate like big ideas with a laugh, and that matters so much. Um, and like I don't know if I would have become nearly as leftist if the right was as funny.
That's fair.
Because that matters, but like also a part of being funny is being able to recognize what speaks to the majority of people. And when you kind of view empathy as a lacking lesser like desire or like feeling, then you don't care if you're funny. You don't care if you're not speaking to everyone, which is why I think a lot of comedians are saying you can't say anything nowadays. Like, no, that's bullshit. Like Anthony Jeselnik, Jimmy Carr,
Yeah,
like there are
right. Yeah.
tons of really offensive comedians who are fucking knocking it out of the park because they know what they're saying. They take credit for it, and even when it's wrong, they recognize that, and they still aim in the right direction.
Well, and to your point, they think about the audience. They're not like, I think
Yeah,
this is funny, so you should listen to it. They're like, I have this idea. I know it's offensive. How do I make it palatable? Like,
yeah.
that's part of the equation, the quote unquote empathy element of it.
Was it Warhol who said uh, art is getting away with it?
Mm.
That was Anthony Jeselnik who was talking about it. Like he's very critical of these comedians who are trying to play that scapegoating thing. Like the
Hmm.
audience is the problem nowadays. If the audience is the problem, you don't know what you're doing. You're a bad
Yeah.
comedian.
Yeah. Yeah, we talked about this in the first episode, which hasn't aired yet, but will soon. The points are still relevant. The actual current events in it are now very well dated, but um, yeah, because you and I got into it over the storytelling mechanism of like kind of Hollywood and like movies and shows. I just here's the thing, like if shows and movies had a huge impact, the world would be such a better place. Like we have back to my points about the Ants movie, right? Or A Bug's Life. Like we've all seen it. Like we know like it just, like so is your point we need more? Like we need to like keep saturating it until it reaches like a point? Cuz it seems like
Well,
people lose so much messaging if there's too much entertainment and not enough poignantness.
yeah, and yeah, we do have an oversaturation. I think in that we don't have shows like, and I think we talked about this on that episode as well. We don't have shows like Star Trek, where if you wanted
God,
sci-fi,
Star Trek is
that's the only
so
one you
good.
fucking get. And so it brings people in despite them maybe not agreeing with what's on like being said, but they still have to engage with it.
Oh, I
Their options are
can't
so
wait for Henry Cavill Warhammer 40K. Speaking of nerd stuff and shows, oh, so good.
yeah.
The within the nerd community, there's that whole like the white supremacist like bent. It's the people that take
Yeah.
the Warhammer thing not as satire, which doesn't make sense because it is always the 40K
Yeah.
world has always been satire. So it's one of those funny things where it's like, yeah, people read the surface level of it. And they're like, yeah, like the Imperium and conservative values and da, da, da. It's like they're all bad guys. You know that, right? Like,
Yeah.
and the ones that you might think are good guys, you have to talk about why they're good guys. Like, what do they do that's good? What do you like? It makes you have to have a conversation. It is not black and white on purpose. Like, it is
Yeah.
meant to either be funny, epic, or inspire conversation. Like that's what it does as a storytelling medium. 40K, yeah, I those are my two sci-fi things: Star Trek and 40K. And my hope is we go Star Trek direction for our future. My actual thing is I feel like also a good show, Altered Carbon. My fears were moving towards the Altered Carbon reality. That wealth gap is going to maintain just long enough for that breakaway technology to happen, and then we're fucked.
Yeah, I mean, that's Gattaca as well, I think. I haven't seen that one, but I've had it downloaded for a while. I think that's one I need to pull the trigger on soon. But yeah, like that's kind of the only thing that makes sense. It I mean, it's a continuation of a pattern. Like rich people have lived longer, like, been healthier for a long time. But yeah, when you funnel money into like certain like technologies, that's just going to be an inevitability
Yeah,
that
maybe next time we will talk technology because I guess for people listening that happen to make it to this point, we originally were going to do an episode on technology, kind of as a current events talk. We recorded an episode that ended up being. I know we talked Palestine and Israel and some other stuff. It was very current events heavy. I'm exhausted today. We weren't sure if this was going to work. So this is entirely impromptu. But maybe next time we'll talk technology. Because back to my thing about like culture, the overemphasis on technology concerns me. Because like yes, technology is good, and like we should keep working on it. But if we don't rein it in with like a cultural structure, the amount of bad it can do is phenomenal.
yeah. Well, and that's just what science fiction is. It's like the entire genre of take this idea, run with it until we get to a bad place.
Except for Star Trek.
And yeah, except for Star Trek. Well, even that, it explores that in really interesting ways. Because I would say that Star Trek begat the Orville. The Orville, like, I don't know if you watched that one.
Yeah, I watched the first season. I don't remember much of it, but I do remember enjoying it thoroughly.
Yeah, for a long time it was like the best modern like Star Trek take because it was like obviously very like heavily inspired and loving towards the source material. It's goofy, like that's okay. Things can be goofy.
Well, it's better to be goofy than just a cheap rehash, because like Star Trek peaked
Yeah.
with Picard, and no one will tell me otherwise.
Well, I mean, so I've only gone through the next generation, but I've seen Pike like in small episodes and clips, and I think he might give Picard a run for his money.
Mm. I'm open to all of it. I know something that doesn't play back well. Doctor Who. First time I watched the whole thing, because I watched, well, not the whole thing, but I watched
From
some of the
nine.
old.
Oh,
Yeah, the Tenet and is it Matt? I don't know. Whatever, the two ones that made it popular again. Um, like I loved it watching it. Then I went to read back and watch it. There is so much filler bullshit episodes. So many, so many.
I I watched a couple of seasons. For whatever reason, it just doesn't resonate with me much.
It's a fun romp.
Yeah,
When you're into it, you see all the depth to it. But like rewatching, I realized like that's not the main part of it.
yeah,
Unlike Star Trek or other stuff.
and yeah. No, I've seen like clips and excerpts that were just like mind blowing. But yeah, you're right. All the fluff was
There's so much
like, man,
fluff in
I don't
it.
want to. I don't want to watch all this.
Yeah. And then there's Star Wars. I get why it was revolutionary for its time. I mean, the story isn't novel in any way,
Yeah,
but I I started watching I guess since we've been talking about the shows, the Clone Wars show, and I didn't get very far into it because I don't have time for that many shows, so
yeah.
I'm very picky with what I'll continue to watch. But it does seem to have the depth that people want out of Star Wars. But yeah,
Yeah, that's one of the few shows that does a pretty good job of like fleshing out. It's like every new bit makes other things deeper.
because
Like,
the non-canon Star Wars universe is wonderful.
yeah, it was massive. There were plenty of things to draw from. Like Rogue One, I was so excited for because I thought they were going to focus on Kyle Katarn, Jedi Outcast, and the Dark Forces trilogy. That was like my favorite as a kid. I really liked Rogue One. I thought they did good things with it. Um, and that, like specifically, the the exhaust port being like a design like sabotage. Like, that's a really good writing,
Hmm.
and yeah, like that makes the world a deeper, better place.
Although the timeline of the main Star Wars movies, like puts in perspective how compared to the non-canons, Emperor Palpatine, like over the course of decades, only lasted a handful of years as an empire, when the previous Sith empires lasted hundreds of years. Sorry, the non-canon empires.
Yeah, but how do you get fascism to last hundreds of years? Like
See, and this is where
that's the idea that
the non-canon stuff is interesting because the and this is, I guess we'll wrap up with this because this is kind of the point, is the story, like we should talk about stories, and I feel like that's what I feel like doesn't get done enough, is that people don't
okay,
talk about the stories, right? Because like I see people that watch shows and they'll talk about what happened. I was like, okay, what does that mean? And then crickets.
yeah,
Because like the original Sith empires were a balancing of the force, right? Like the Sith force isn't evil, right? Like that's supposed to be part of the like the deeper point. That there's times when like the great Sith rulers would rule, and they were like they ruled cruelly, but for the average person it was peaceful, right? Because they had
yeah,
their like control, but like they had the power. They weren't trying to get more power like from other people. Yeah, so there was this weird like balance, right? That's the whole point of the Force. It was a balance that allowed the Sith empires to last a long time. So it's interesting. Like that how does the balance play out versus the like angry, upset, like never grew out of high school Palpatine
Uh-huh.
trying to be like I'm the greatest.
Because so the reason I asked that is because like what like for things to last, for them to keep moving, there has to be some sort of hope and like direction. And fascism doesn't provide that.
That's a
Like the
really good
idea
point.
that yeah, like imagine you get everything you want. How does that make the world a better place? Like
Well,
say
and then you're just trying to maintain, right? Like
yeah, I mean,
you're not moving towards anything.
yeah. Have you heard of trinary instead of binary? Like
In what context?
well, like I think computing um so it's a way of measuring something. So instead of it being a 1 or a 0, it's a forward stop or backwards.
Hmm.
So, and that's kind of how I look at politics. It's like stop is like a very singular place. You've got to be right on it. It doesn't matter like that's a really tight like line to walk. Um, so if you're not going forward, you're probably going backwards, vice versa. Like things are very rarely like that conservative ideal of staying exactly the same in exactly the right spot.
Yeah, the only consistent thing is change. The only certain thing
Yeah.
is death and taxes.
Mm. So yeah, I think that if you allow things to start regressing, that is kind of a it's you've rolled the snowball up the hill and it's just going to keep gathering and gathering snow. Um, but the same is true for like the other side. If you're progressing like that, you'll get to the top and start rolling down to the progressive side. And both can be scary, both can be bad. Like we don't know what's on the other side of the progressive hill, which is the fundamental fear of conservatives, right? But we do know what's on the conservative side, and that's the thing that progressives are afraid of. That idea that we should be pushing towards a better world, that there is hope for, I think is the only thing that is sustainable.
Hmm. Yeah, there's a quote floating around TikTok. I've seen it a couple times now where, uh, like one of the things I'm paraphrasing, but like one of the things we know from history is that if you find yourself on the side that's against the progressive ideals of universities and like
Yeah,
the rising generations, you're on the wrong side of history.
yeah. These are the children they were talking about shape the future.
Hmm. Which, yeah, and maybe we just have to wait. We just have to hold out. Kind of to your point that maybe the stories are working and we're getting there. And I do feel that I'm overall an optimist. I do think back to the point with the podcast, right? Like this is a thing. I instead of just listening to music, I can just listen to an MIT scientist talk to a physicist for my
Yeah,
entertainment. Like that's fucking wild. And have it be entertaining. Like it's designed to be like listened to in that way.
yeah.
It's a crazy direction we've taken. And I think like we're moving in a good direction. The crazy shit in the world might just be the like dying scared animal of the old, right? It's getting backed slowly into a corner and it's lashing out.
Yeah, it's
So
death throes of the older generations. Maybe.
we can hope.
Um,
I think that's a good spot to end it on.